Hey guys, and welcome to Quality Shot. As you can tell, I thought I'd come outside and record because, well, the weather's good. So why not? Let's see how it goes. And hopefully the lighting's all good. I mean, it's absolutely blazing here. So I'm just going to assume that it is good and go with it. Okay, so as you can tell from the title, it's my reaction to White knocking out Povetkin, getting his revenge in the Rumble on the Rock. And for those of you who follow the channel already, first of all, thank you very much for your support. And I'm assuming you've already seen the Xavier Miller interview. If not, go and see it. It's from before the fight. I should also be, fingers crossed, getting him on as well after for his post fight reaction. And before we go any further, please do remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really, really does help. I appreciate everyone's support. And of course, click that notification bell as well to get alerted to all the new videos. Okay, let's go straight into this because I want to do my reaction and how the fight went, and also where White goes from here as well, and kind of what is in his future, and also Povetkin's, to be fair, as well. So, for anyone that doesn't know, Povetkin obviously comprehensively knocking out Dillian Whyte in the first fight with a ridiculous uppercut after Povetkin was dropped twice by Dillian Whyte. Dillian Whyte looked in control, and it was a huge upset in fight camp last summer, and it was a massive shock, really, to the system for not just Dillian Whyte, but for Matchroom. He got up, and I think straight away he was asking for the rematch. And Dillian Whyte strikes me as the type of person that, you know what, mentally he's very, very tough. He's got this mental fortitude that not a lot of people will have, especially elite sportsmen. And you might think I'm crazy for saying that, but you know, elite sportsmen can be uh, mentally fragile at times. I think, especially with the rigors and demands of elite sports. So he's someone who definitely just brushes himself off, comes again, and this performance really epitomized that. I think a lot of fighters might think, you know what, I've just been knocked out. I'm gonna box even on the back foot. I'm gonna pick my shots, be a bit more cautious. I actually saw some people say that they thought he was more cautious in this fight. I disagree. And I don't think he was reckless either, but I think it was more calculated, and I actually think his work rate was better. It'll be interesting to see the punch stats for it, but from my understanding, from watching it live, both fights live, I definitely got the feeling, and whether it was more punches thrown or whether it was just his feet, that he was causing and applying more pressure in a smarter way. Obviously, in the corner, Xavier Miller, as I said, I've talked to him, fantastic guy, really, really nice, and he just seems to know his stuff. I mean, he's got this aura around him. You know, he's a self-admitted boxing nerd, and he definitely studies the game to a T. And they have the addition of Harold the Shadow Knight in the corner, ex and well former co-trainer even of Lennox Lewis, who we know how good Lennox Lewis was. So alongside Emmanuel Stewart, Harold the Shadow Knight was there, and actually, I think I saw a little bit of the Kronk style in this, and that might be slightly the influence of Harold Knight, actually, because Dillian Whyte definitely utilized the 1-2, and his straight right hand, looked a lot stronger than it has in the past. He said that in the past he's actually had problems with his right hand, injuries, or not being able to throw it properly. Well, I remember hearing him actually I think it was maybe a year and a half ago. He said, "Look, I'm not just going to be a guy who can throw left hook, sorry, and that's just my big power shot. I want to be able to, and I do have the ability and power to throw a right hand and knock someone out." And I tell you what, it was a weapon throughout. As long as the fight did last, only those 4 rounds, and it was just a really, really dominant and impressive performance. And for those who say, or those naysayers afterwards saying, "Oh, you know what? He it was easy. Povetkin is old, and you know didn't really look himself." And Dillian Whyte, yeah, it was okay performance. He looked like rubbish. This is what I'm going to say to you. Before this fight, a lot of those people were saying that he was going to lose, right? Again, they were saying he's going to lose again. They were laughing when he got uppercutted, right? In devastating fashion. Let's be honest. It was probably after that Javante Davis Santa Cruz uppercut knockout, the victory is probably second to that as one of the knockouts of the year. Now he does the business here, right? In 4 rounds, Yes, Povetkin maybe didn't look super sharp, but do you not think that a lot of it has to come down to White coming in looking a lot lighter on his feet and also hurting Povetkin from literally the first, I think it was 30 seconds or so, he hurt him straight away and he wobbled him. Now, this to me just made sure that the rest of the fight followed in that tone. So I think it's really, really just incredible of someone to say after the fact that, oh, okay, well, he knocked him out. And what, let's be honest, if you're a Dillian Whyte fan, this is the best result possible. I talked to Xavier Miller before and he said, look, it's win by any means necessary, but a knockout is a bonus, right? I was like, that's fair enough. I can understand why he's saying that. And he would say that because he doesn't want to put pressure on his fighter to knock out Alexander Povetkin, right? But he goes out there, gets the win, gets the KO as well, by the way, and wobbles Povetkin a couple of times. And Povetkin doesn't look like at any point that he just doesn't look with it really. And I think that's just because not necessarily because he wasn't with it. I think because they would have done all the medical checks. I think it was just Dillian Whyte from round one applied this pressure, this kind of calculated pressure from round one. And one thing that he utilized really well, which we know is a good weapon, sometimes doesn't use it to the best of his ability, is his jab. And how the Shadow Knight in the corner and Xavier Miller were saying to him constantly, use the jab, double jab, use it. And obviously, Dillian Whyte said after, look, it, that's fine for them to say, but also I need to be the one to utilize at the right times. And he did exactly that. He didn't go in wildly like sometimes we see him swinging hooks from the hip, which sometimes you might see someone like Derek Chisora doing. You saw him trying to be more calculated. He's got long levers. He's got really good reach. He pumped out the jab, singles and doubles, and then basically went off that. He used the jab to then make sure that he could throw the right hand after. He'd utilize it and kind of throw off the jab. And that was what, to me, was really impressive. And it seems really simple to say, but against someone like Povetkin, who's so schooled, he's an Olympic gold medalist, former world champion. This guy's no mug, right? People forget that, yes, he's old, but Xavier Miller made a really good point to me in the interview I did with him. And to be fair, he's got a point. Is just because he's older, what does that mean that he's not a good fighter? Of course not. Why would that mean he's not a good fighter? He's still got a breadth of experience and he's still got power. And he closed the distance really quickly. And actually, when they were doing the pads in Gibraltar for the warm ups, I could see what he was saying. I could see that he closed the distance quite quickly. And it wasn't Xavier, it was actually someone else as a pundit. I explained that. And I watched him and I thought, you know what? He's right. He's got a point there. Now, just to go into the fight, because again, it didn't last too long. In the first round, of course, I think it was actually a right uppercut or right hook even that Dillian Whyte threw as a glancing shot, and Povetkin was stumbling. Then we go through the rounds. Dillian Whyte kind of just continually hurting Povetkin, but not a huge amount. It was just kind of again, as I said, calculated pressure going in. Actually, after in that first round, he did try to go for the kill pretty much straight away. And he alluded to that after, and he did go a little bit wild for 10 to 15 seconds of that round where he knew he'd hurt Povetkin. He started swinging a bit wildly, trying to go for the overhand right, which we know is a shot that he likes to throw. And he started swinging a little bit wildly, but then I think he tempered himself and he went back to, you know what? Okay, he's not ready to go yet. And I'm throwing a bit crazy here, right? I'm going a bit mental windmilling here. So he came back into his own, which was fantastic. And then from the second round onwards, I just think he was in control. He knew that he could hurt Povetkin again. Povetkin just looked unsteady really from that first round. Controlled it, and then we get into the fourth round. And I can skip to the fourth round because the second and third round really not uneventful, but they're the rounds that you look at and you just think it's coming, the knockout's coming. And in that fourth round, it's actually the 1-2, which we associate with someone like AJ, right? Throwing that 1-2. Now, Dillian Whyte, we saw it with Fury against Wilder, utilizing that right hand, that Kronk style. I'm telling you, there's something there. There's something there that Kronk style is definitely there. 100% is there. And it was just absolutely crazy to see, and really good to see. Even it was fantastic to see that Dillian Whyte was utilizing it. And again, it might not be the exact Kronk style, but I think it just reminded me of that. And obviously, how the Shadow Knight, being the co-trainer of Lennox Lewis, Emmanuel Stewart is Kronk, right? That's what he is. So for me, that was just really interesting to see. And another point that I want to make is Dillian Whyte's feet were a lot better. Sometimes he can be, I've seen in the past, and it might be when he's been a bit heavier, but he can sometimes be a bit lumbering. His feet are maybe not as quick as you'd see other fighters. But still has always had a good jab, a good power in that left hook. We know how dangerous that is. But his feet have not always been the quickest. I thought his feet were a lot better today. Or, sorry, not today, the other day. And after having a couple of days as well, watching the fight a few times and being able to look at it, I just thought, you know what, that was really, really impressive. In terms of his foot movement, was really, really impressive. And I just thought he's improved. Not look, he was only, I think it was something like half a stone lighter. So it's not a huge amount, but it was enough to me. That made me think he came in looked trimmer as well, even more trim than that first fight. And he just came into that, and I was thinking to myself, you know what, he looks in pretty good shape, and he seemed to move a lot better as well. It wasn't lumbering at all. He seemed to be moving a lot better, and I think if you can move well as a heavyweight, then that's only a positive, isn't it? Let's be honest. So that for me was a massive positive for him. Now going forward, obviously I'll kind of finish up on that fourth round. He utilized the 1-2, and Povetkin goes. Basically, he launches Povetkin with a glancing right hand. Really, he didn't land flush, and Povetkin just catapults back into the ropes, and you can see he's ready to go. He throws, I think, another kind of short right hook and tries to get him out. Doesn't quite land. Povetkin again stumbling, and he just catches him with this huge left hook, which you know how powerful Dillian Whyte's left hook is, and he completely cleans him. I mean, it just took him to the cleaners, and Povetkin's on his back, and he's kind of trying to get up. The referee's counting. I don't think the referee would have continued anyway, but the corner throws the towel in as well, just for good measure. Now, as I said, this is a super impressive performance, and anyone that wants to dispute that, I just can't see why. It was very, very impressive. It was fantastic to see, and a really, really good performance overall from Dillian Whyte. I would say, I would go as far as to say potentially his career best performance to date. I mean, you look at some of his performances against that have been impressive. I mean, the Joseph Park one he just edged. I wouldn't call that super impressive, but I think he definitely. I mean, look, beating a former world champion is still a big feat. Obviously, Chisora, the second fight you could say is up there as well. He's beaten Lucas Brown. Oscar Rivas is very dangerous as well. Beat him, but I think this one is his biggest. Now, let's go and look at it going forward, because I think I've touched upon the fight enough, and I just don't think there's any reason to go into it a huge amount. The last thing, actually, I do want to say is, again, I don't agree with the fact that Povetkin didn't look himself, and because he had COVID, etc. Because I feel like that's so relevant. They kept on pushing it back, and that probably would have helped Povetkin because he needed time to recover. He came in slightly heavier, and some people said, I've heard other podcasts saying that, and channels say that, oh, he looked overweight or he looked podgy, and I was like, no, he didn't. I was like, he didn't look that at all, but I don't know. But anyways, the one thing I would say is that when they did the walk-ins, he walked in and he did not look 100%. He was walking and it was almost like he wasn't quite. And this is going to sound really controversial. I don't think this was the case, but if you want to be really, really critical and cynical, you could say it looked like he wasn't in the best frame of mind or kind of physical or mental state, and he was just like, I'm just going to get my paycheck. But I don't think that's the case. I think Povetkin is a competitor. We've seen him against AJ and others, and I think he wants to go in there and win, and at all costs. So I don't think that's the case, but let's touch upon what's next for him, though. I mean, obviously it's a devastating knockout loss. He's lost really only at the top level, because apart from this Whyte lost. He's lost to AJ, obviously, when challenging him. I actually went to that fight. It was in Wembley with a few mates. So Kevel, for you guys that have seen him, he was one of them that went, and a few others. And it was a really impressive performance from AJ in the end. But he had a couple of very hairy moments in those first few rounds against Povetkin. And then obviously that fight against Vladimir Klitschko, where he got dropped, but ended up losing a points decision in the end. So he's only really lost to the very best in the division. Has he underachieved in his career? Potentially, because he was a gold medalist, and yes, he did win a version of the WBA title, but I don't think when he won it as well, the fighters around, I wouldn't say it was, he kind of, I don't know if that was the peak of his career. I would say probably the gold medal at Athens was. Look, I mean, he's going to go down as a world class fighter. He'll go down as a very accomplished fighter. He's not going to be one of the generation's greats. He'll go down as one of the generation's danger men, alongside your, maybe, I don't know where. I'm trying to think of a similarity. I mean, would he be someone like a Luis Ortiz? I think he's slightly above that level. I think I don't know. He's just slightly below your AJ Furies and your Klitschko's, I think, and that's just where he's at. But he's in front of, I think, the people like your Luis Ortiz's, your Joseph Parker's. Even though Joseph Parker was a world champion, I think Povetkin, when he retires, he'll be slightly above that. Unless Joseph Parker, but Joseph Parker's still got time to go on and do stuff. But if we look at it from now and what both have done, look, I think it's time for him to retire. I know it's easy for me to say, sitting here in my garden and talking, to you guys, but realistically, I think he needs to retire. I think it's become a case of, look, he's getting on a little bit. This was his chance. If he beating Dillian Whyte, then he gets his mandatory slot. But realistically, what's the point in carrying on? And I'll tell you why. Who's he going to fight next? Is he going to get a chance at world title? Do you think anytime soon? No. AJ Fury are probably going to be tied up, even if they're not. Dillian Whyte's mandatory, Usyk's mandatory. I can't see him getting a title shot. He'll have to work his way back up into contention. It'll probably take him 3-4 years to get there. He's way too old now. I think he's only 42. He's 41, 42. He just needs to call it a day. I think his manager said the same, that he's going to really push forward the agenda of retirement. I think that's the right thing to do. He's done a lot for the sport. He's done a lot in the sport. And he seems a competitor. He seems respectful. Look, I think he's had his time. He's on the decline. You don't want to see him get in there and get kind of cruel punishment or unnecessary punishment for no reason. So that would be my thing on him. Now we get on to the more important and interesting future in Dillian Whyte. So what happens next for him now? He came out and said a couple of really hilarious things, which only Dillian Whyte would say. And I think you have to take it with a pinch of salt and say that, he doesn't really mean this stuff. He just gets excited. And he says something like, they asked him, what next? He said, I want my world title fight next because I've been waiting long enough. Because, there was that whole thing where he was waiting. I think he was over 1,000 days as mandatory to Deontay Wilder with the WBC crown. And then obviously didn't get it in the end. Deontay Wilder DM'd him on Instagram saying, I'm never going to give you a title shot, which obviously wouldn't have helped. And then in addition to that, we also had the issue with him losing, because really that loss to Povetkin, he was taking chance after chance after chance. It was all going okay. Then he took one chance, potentially too many, or just made a mistake, and that's it. And that really hurt him. Right, okay, so you've got AJ and Fury tied up. So he did say, I might have to break AJ's legs and then I can face Fury. Again, that's tongue in cheek. But then in addition to that, he also said, look, if I'm not going to fight one of those guys, then let's see. I get the feeling from his interviews with IFL TV and Coogan and others as well that yes, he does want to fight regularly. He doesn't want to just stick around. He does want to fight like 1 or 2 more times this year, which would be fantastic for him. I think he should stay active. But realistically, does he want to go in with a killer or someone who, I think, for example, they said about Deontay Wilder. Now, him against Deontay Wilder, by the way, and before I go on to other suggestions, I think that is the best fight. And I think potentially it could be even more exciting than AJ versus Fury in terms of the actual fight. And if you think about the build-up, it'll be incredible. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we see tables flown, shoving, pushing, all sorts, man. I mean, it would have it all. It would just be crazy to see, and it would be explosive. I mean, these guys are just going in there wanting to knock each other's heads off because they do not like each other at all. It'll be an absolute slugfest, and I'll tell you what, just whoever lands first. And who knows who would win that fight. I think it's a real 50-50 fight. Also, it'll be interesting to see how Deontay Wilder's head is after this whole Fury debacle and the excuses, etc. And he just doesn't quite look, or doesn't look anyway, that he's mentally maybe all the way there, which is a bit worrying, I think, for sure. And hopefully he kind of is there, and it's just the perception that's coming across at the moment. But yeah, that would be an incredible fight. That's what I want next. I mean, he said, I think also he's warranted an easy fight in between. Of course he has. He's taken chance after chance after chance. Why not? And one fight that he mentioned is Trevor Bryan, right? Who's got the WBA regular title. It's still a version of the world title. And Dillian Whyte in the past has, shown interest in that because it's still a world title. Well, it's seen as a world title. Is it? Well, I guess kind of the regular belt. And I guess, you had Manuel Charr, who is really, I mean, he just held on to it. And that's what I mean. I didn't never really regard him as a world champion, but Trevor Bryan won the vacant one. Now, what do you do? If I'm Dillian Whyte, realistically, I would say, give me Trevor Bryan next. I'll beat him up, which will probably happen. Win the WBA regular, right? Then I'll face Deontay Wilder after that. That's what I would do. That's what I would do. Because realistically, he's not going to get a chance at AJ and Fury if they do fight for another. What I mean, if they fight twice this year, I mean, he's not going to be able to fight them this year. So it'll be next year. Say next year in the summer, let's say, right? Next year in the summer. So if that's the case, right, next year in the summer, then potentially he could fight. He's just fought, so he can potentially fight 2 more times. He's just fought in March. So what, you got April, May, June. He can potentially fight in July, and then July, August, and December. July and December even. Perfect. Why not? That's what I would do. Trevor Bryan in July, Deontay Wilder back end of the year. That would be a fantastic fight. I mean, that's really, I think, as a fan of, and I'm not specifically a Dillian Whyte fan. I'm a fan of his in terms of, I really like his character and the way he fights. I think he's exciting for the division. I wouldn't say that I'm a fan as in he's the only guy, or I'm his biggest fan, or that's the only person that I support. But I think he's really, really good. I think he's quality, actually. So let's see how it goes. I'm really looking forward to seeing him come out again. Guys, as well, please do remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It really, really does help. I really appreciate it. As I said, I should be getting, fingers crossed, an interview out post-fight with Xavier Miller, and also Yusuf Kamari, who is also trained by Xavier Miller, like Dillian Whyte, and he's actually managed by Dillian Whyte. So he had a very impressive victory against Cain Baker on the undercard. I will also do an undercard review as well. It'll be a separate video, so look out for that as well. Thank you very much, guys, and see you on the next video. Take care. Thank you very much.